Well, Megan, it's great to have you on the show today. I am so glad to get a chance to catch up. I feel like we haven't seen each other like in real life in a really long time, and we're in the same Weavers Guild.
Yes.
We can't even gather right now thanks to this pandemic, but I'm really encouraged because you've been able to come up do some really awesome work with your kitchen dyeing book, which I don't know how it's going to show up, but I have on my iPad here. And congratulations on your new ebook. This is really excellent. I'm assuming this was a pandemic project. Can you talk a little bit about how you launched into this?
It's definitely a pandemic project. I was slated to teach a lot of workshops this year. I love teaching workshops. It's one of my favorite things is to make an experience for my students and to make sure everything is covered. All the dye pots are ready to go. Samples are ready. Let's just do the fun part of dyeing. And that obviously could not happen this year, which was a little bit tragic for me. I miss seeing people. I miss like interacting with people in the classroom setting. So in the middle of the summer, I was working with my wonderful photographer, Emily McDonald, who comes over and just puts her camera wherever I need it to be put and just takes pictures of everything that I do. I get everything set up and we just talk about dyeing all day long. So she was able to really capture what I like to do in workshops. And it was wonderful. So with those pictures, it kind of led to what I was writing where inside my book so that I could offer it to students, maybe even students that aren't in West Michigan where I primarily teach, that could take this workshop and do something at home. I do a lot of natural dye work and other fiber related work that maybe isn't good for the home kitchen or for new dyers or older dyers, I guess, or like dye work, I guess, in general. But I really love the kitchen dyeing workshop because you can do it at home. And you can do it with kitchen pots. Usually with dye workshop, I recommend to not use your kitchen pots when you're like boiling up walnuts. But when you're using avocados and onion skins, it's basically just like making soup. Or the tea recipe that I use, it's just making like a pot of tea that can still produce really lovely colors.
Well, and that's what makes this book so great because it is truly an entry level dyeing book because you don't need a bunch of extra supplies. It takes a little bit to collect the onion skins, but you can go to the grocery store and if you ask nicely, they'll actually let you collect the onion skin. I mean, don't just go and take out the onion skins, but, and you can actually weigh them and they're not very expensive at all. You gotta pay for the onion skins. So, it's sometimes
I also like doing that at the farmer's market too. If you go to a farmer's market, like usually like a lot of farmers are completely okay with you saving skins. And if you can develop a relationship with a farmer, then it's even better. They'll just save the skins for you.
Let's talk a little bit about the projects that are in this book and you can show us some samples.
Yeah, so the main project that I propose in the book is dyeing a set of cotton napkins, or linen napkins. I think the set in the book is actually a set of linen napkins, just an older set that I found in an antique store somewhere. But I think that it's a really beautiful process to be able to use something that you dyed. I find pride in that. Like, I think all of my napkins at this point are dyed with natural dyes in some way. So whenever when I used to have dinner parties, it was always like pretty nice to like be able to set a table with something that like I made. And maybe I wouldn't necessarily like point it out and say I made this or like I dyed this, but I knew. So I really like using things that I've dyed. I really love the colors of natural dyes. And I think that there's something poetic about using napkins that you dye with kitchen scraps. Plus they're small and they don't weigh a lot. And a lot of times with the kitchen dyeing, you need like larger quantities. I talk in my book about like ratios and I kind of set that at like 100 grams, like what you need to dye 100 grams of fiber, which is roughly a quarter of a pound. But 100 grams of fiber to get like a stronger color. You can always get lighter colors if you want, but by using like a bath that you've already dyed in. But like I like to set it at that 100-gram level so you can collect more avocado skins if you're dyeing a bigger project or not. So the napkins work really well, and that was the project that I chose for this workshop. I also dye samples. Usually in like my in-person workshops, we dye a bunch of samples. I like to show my students exactly what the color looks like on cellulose, like cotton or linen, versus protein fibers like wool and silk, because a lot of dyes take differently to both. So I really like showing that like breadth of samples or breadth of color. So yeah, I do a set of samples throughout the workshop too. I'm also offering with my workshop or my ebook that you can buy a physical set of samples and napkins too. So if you did want to follow along with the book with the recipes exactly and make your own sample set and napkins, I have that available on my website as well.
That's already prepped for dyeing, so people.
It's already prepped. So it has like the first two processes taken care of, which is scoring, thoroughly cleaning your product. A lot of, especially cotton fibers, will have like almost like a waxy feel to them, or like other kind of oils attached to them. The same thing with wool. So you just want to make sure that your fiber is clean enough so that the dye is taking well to the fiber. And the first step to that is properly cleaning it. And I find with my workshops, I usually bring already washed and then already mordanted fiber to my workshops because those processes take a little bit longer. It's just, a couple hours of boiling or simmering pots of clear water with fiber in it. And that would make any of my workshops go from 3 hours to like 10 hours with a lot of watching water boil. And we do enough of that as is in my workshops. So the second process, the mordancing process, really helps bind the dye to the fiber, which is another somewhat tedious, or not tedious, but like a time-consuming process of just like letting your fiber like soak in a solution that's clear again. So I like to like take out those like longer steps and really like show students the magic of just the dye work in general. So I really wanted to do that with this ebook as well, and that's where the material kit came in.
Well, and that would make a nice gift too for people as we're getting into that holiday season. It's a nice gift to order the ebook and then present the person with maybe they could order the kit ahead of time and then present that ebook to a crafty friend and get them started right away, because it's a great way to get hooked on natural dyeing is that work is done ahead of time. And so you can kind of just get experimenting with the color. So I think that is very clever on your part. And it is more fun when you can just start dyeing right away. So it's awesome that you're offering that service to people. That's really cool. So in the book, if you can talk about the 4 types of dyes that you're working with, and these are natural dyes readily available. We can talk a little bit about what kind of colors people can expect to get using your book.
Yeah, so I think one of the first most popular kitchen dyes that most people have heard of is dyeing with avocado skins and pits. It comes out to be a really lovely, like blush pink. You can get darker mauves too, or like darker like pink mauves if like you have a higher concentration of skins and pits. But it's really all about the experimenting with any of these dyes, with like the quantity of dye stuff you're putting in versus the material you're putting in. I find that the longer you can let the avocado pits and skins simmer, the better. So I discuss in my recipe that the best way to do this is to let it simmer for a while and then let it sit overnight and then bring it back up to simmer the next day and let it sit overnight. And if you have time, or if you have time to do that the second time. So usually you can get colors if you just do that twice, but like I kind of tend to go for like a 3 time of like heating it up and like letting it rest. I just like the darker pinks that I can get from it. So that's what you can get from avocados. Tea is always a good dye. All of these kitchen dyes I use have something called tannin in them, or like a naturally occurring tannin, which makes for a stronger dye overall too. So anything that you find that have tannin, which is a lot of like tree barks have tannin in them, and then all of these items too. So the tea and the avocado and the other ones we'll discuss as well. So it kind of strengthens the dye overall. So I really like using tea. It gives like a pale brownish color that can either vary with a slight pink undertone if you're using like black or red tea, or a slight yellow undertone if you're using green teas. So it's kind of a nice experimental thing that you can do, as well as like try using different teas. In the book, I just used tea bags, but you could also easily use loose leaf teas or experiment with that. I think I suggest in the book that it's a good way to clear out like your tea cabinet. If you have, my husband one time bought a whole box of decaffeinated, like Irish breakfast tea or something, and we don't drink decaf tea here, so it's just something that was sitting around for a while. Like, I can make a dye out of it.
Right. Do you ever use tea bags that you've already, like, that you have a cup of tea? Do you ever use your old tea bags?
I think it would be, the problem would be like saving them. I have never done that, but like I guess it would work if you like froze the tea bags, because you need like quite a bit of tea to do this experiment, or to do this this recipe. And I think I put it at like 10 to 20 bags is like a good starting point, but like who's having like 10 bags of tea all at once? But I think you can still get color out of it. It just might not be that strong. So usually, like, once again, I'm trying to go for like the strongest color that I possibly can.
Right. So obviously,
I don't see any reason to like not make yourself a cup of tea while you're like dyeing with tea, right? And then you can put that tea bag inside there, no problem. I think that would be nice and probably like comforting as well.
Right. You probably just don't want to have 10 bags of tea at the time.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So the next dye that I have in my book is onion skins, which, as like you were mentioning, it's kind of almost like a fun thing to collect as you're like cooking. Like they're just around all the time, so why not like have a bag of them? I was talking to one of our guild members who I had edit this book for me, Margaret, but she was telling me that another guild member usually just freezes her onion skins, and she doesn't worry about the onion flesh that's on there. So if she has like an onion skin that has the skin with like a piece of the flesh connected to it, she just still throws it in the bag and freezes it and then boils them all up later, which makes sense, but I think you would just need more weight to them because like the fleshy part of the onion skins is heavier or denser. So I didn't include that in my book because I haven't experimented with that enough. But I thought that was an interesting tip, is that you could just use the onion skin or like the onion flesh as well as like the skin in it, if you don't want to spend all that time like meticulously peeling off each of the flaky skins. But I do suggest just doing the flaky skins, because then you can just keep them in like a bag on the counter or like a container on the counter and not necessarily be taking up freezer space.
I see.
But one thing that I find interesting about onion skins is that you can get different colors depending on like what onion or what color onion skin you're using. So yellow onion skins can be very different than red onion skins. In this past time, especially, I was amazed by like the type of green that I could get from red onion skins, which I have like a little sample here. I don't know if it's going to show up very well there, but like that's the wool, the silk, and the cotton, and it's kind of a little bit duller on the screen than it is in person. So, and then the final dye that I use is pomegranate, and in this book, I really wanted to show or open the world of natural dyes to the dyer. So I like to use powdered pomegranate in this case, and not necessarily pomegranate rind. The recipe does have, or there is a recipe for pomegranate rind, and you can get similar results because that's the part of the pomegranate that we use, not necessarily the seeds. So we're not going to be getting like a pink color from pomegranate, and instead we're getting another one of those tannish colors that is really nice if you want to like change that color with a modifier like iron. And I show the results of modifying with iron in my book as well, which is really nice to use. It increases the types of color you can get from a single pot. And I like the tones that I get from using iron as a modifier because they're just a little darker, a little more moody, I guess. The technical term is called saddening the color. So you can go from something that's like bright to something that's just like a little bit darker just by introducing like an iron water bath into that recipe.
When you make your iron water bath, how do you make that?
I have a powdered iron that I use, so I just like mix a little bit of that powder with water, and you can either have that be like a hot bath or just a cold bath too, and that should be able to shift the color enough. You only want to use a little bit of iron, and you want to be careful with protein fibers, especially wool, because if you use too much iron or if you leave your wool in the iron bath for too long, it can almost get like a gritty texture, which nobody wants gritty yarn. So I would avoid leaving your yarn in the iron bath for extended period of time.
So are you just ordering your iron, powdered iron from a supply shop online, or?
Yes, but I have heard too from our wonderful guild member, Margaret, that you can use iron tablets. So it's something else that I personally have not tried, but like I'm very intrigued by now that there are iron like tablets or pills that people use or that people take to balance out their bodies, and you can use those tablets very easily in just like dissolving a few in water, and then you have your iron water there.
So you said you can use the iron tablets just from like your grocery store or drugstore and just dissolve it then in water?
Yes.
Is that harder to figure out? I wonder, like how much you need?
Probably.
Yeah.
This is also why I didn't include it in this round of this book. I often start all of my in-person workshops with like the disclaimer that I'm learning as much as my students are learning in a workshop, and that a workshop that they take from me at this point is going to be a lot different than what somebody is going to take from me a year from now.
Sure.
So if I get around to the experiments with both iron tablets as well as like that onion flesh and skin thing, then that very well could be in like the next edition of this book, whenever that happens.
This was, really fun. I'll show you some of my examples. You had sent me you sent me 4 napkins. This was from the Redskins, and I put one in first. Okay. And then you can tell and then that's another thing people can do. I put one in initially and then added another one. You get a little bit of color variation there. Yeah. And then I had dropped in a bunch of like fabric scraps that I had, just different things I had around, and some of the prints. I do a lot of test prints for my, so I was able to like just print a bunch of things, these were all boring, like all the same color, like kind of an off-white, and got really cool color off of that. Great. So that was really fun. And when you hold them all together, there's definitely, it's all from one dye pot, and there's some variation in the colors there, which is fun.
But also pretty strong color, yeah.
So that was from the Redskins, what I just held up, the red onion skins. And then this was the yellow skins. And I put this was the napkin you sent. So this is a sample of what is possible with I just dipped this in. I did not pre-treat this at all. This is ready to go. And then I had quite a bit of variation in the colors just with how soon you put things in. And want to get kind of an ombre effect, you can dip it. I did do that with the dark. It was funny, I showed my husband this. Now this is a sample off of a rectangle weaving loom, so if people are wondering where did she get this, this was just a sample that I made. And I showed this to my husband, and he's like, I don't know if that's good or bad. He didn't know like if it was bad that this didn't have any color on it. But what I did is I just kind of dip dyed this, so just to kind of show just to kind of see what would happen. And that's the thing about this, is a lot of it is just kind of experimental, like just what can happen if you do this. And then what I like to do, because I like to get as much color as possible out of dye pots. In fact, they're still in my kitchen right now because I'm not done. So what I did is in between, so I have the dark color, and then this was, I mixed, when I took all the onion skins out of the pot, I put them into a third pot. Added more water there, and so it was a mix of the red onion skins and then the yellow onion skins, and I ended up getting, so this is the other napkin that you sent, the 4th napkin, and it was really fun to kind of just see what you can do. And then with the yarn, I had some wool yarn, I put half of it in the red onions, so I just kind of folded it up, dipped half of it in that, I put this in the yellow skins, and then kind of let it meet in the middle a little bit, and so now I have some kind of cool yarn. So I had a lot of fun with this, and it kind of, I think the point that I hope people take away from this is this is accessible to everyone, and it's always fun to like bring other people to the table and give them a chance to. And of course, now we're not really bringing anybody to our literal tables that doesn't live in our house, but what's really cool is this is something you can get at home with this book, you can start dyeing, doing some experiments in your own house. And you can then, once you learn the basics, you can kind of do your own thing. So if you're dyeing things, dipping between a couple pots or whatever you want to do, it's all accessible and very easy. And this is kind of just a starting point. And what I always tell people is if you figure something out that I don't know, please do get in contact. So if you guys, the folks at home, if you guys learn something, a little trick, let Megan know. so she can maybe put it into her next ebook. But yeah, I think this is really fun and it's very satisfying too. And I think color really can lift your mood. You know, if you think about you have some fabric scraps, or even if you have a shirt or a dress or something in your wardrobe that you're like, oh, it has a stain on it, or it just, you know, you're like, this needs a boost. Natural dyeing is a great way to do it because these are colors found in in this case, our food, but colors found in nature. And I find that they tend to go well together too. Because like when I look at all these colors together, I'm like, wow, they work. So this book is really for everyone that really wants to just start dyeing and learn someone else's process and maybe refine your own. And I think you made the part that people consider kind of boring, the prep work. You kind of break it down so it's easy to understand, easy to follow, and people won't be just tempted to skip it, because we all know what happens when you skip the prep work. You end up with yarn and fabric that the color can wash out of, and it's just not as color fast. So doing the prep work is essential. But then if you don't want to do the prep work, you can hop on Megan's website and order a kit. So, and why don't you remind us what your website is so people know where to go to see everything you're making?
It's pretty easy. It's just adventuretextiles.com. So Adventure Textiles with an S.com. And then that's where like the rest of my work is too. One aspect is definitely workshops and creating like these experiences for people, usually in person. But the other aspect of my work is to make like warm, cozy scarves. So, especially as we're headed into winter, if you're looking for a warm, cozy scarf, like come find me at adventuretextiles.com.
And you're also making face masks too, which is something we never imagined we would be doing.
I actually have one. Can I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, this is, so they all have like little leather snaps on them, and that's kind of my thing, is putting leather snaps on things. So they're like the 3D face mask. So they have, kind of works like that. And then it has like little adjusters on either side. So you can kind of tighten it up or loosen it. I don't know if you can hear me very well.
Yeah, no, I can hear you. And so is that like, what kind of, are you using just like string or yarn or as your...
It's like a linen. It's the same like linen that I use, for like all of my hand stitching on the leather tabs.
Oh, cool.
So it's pretty strong, but it's also like kind of almost like silky and smooth. So it's not like irritating at all.
Oh,
so
nice.
I really wanted to make a face mask that you could snap on and forget about. So that's that.
Yeah, because a lot of people are fidgeting with the...
Yeah.
And is that one, is that a print that you made?
It's indigo, so it's just it's a scrunch dyed indigo fabric.
Very nice. And so have you been able to, you feel like with this project, it sounds like you've been able to kind of pivot and make some good things happen as a result of I mean, because a lot of us would do shows, teach workshops, and that summer of workshops and going to festivals and all that was completely lost. But so the silver lining, what has been the silver lining for you? Like, what has this allowed you to do during this difficult time?
It has been nice to focus on my work and then promoting it like in the digital sphere. So I'm on like Instagram and Facebook, but I do more on Instagram of sharing my process as well as focusing on like, I guess, my internet sales, my website sales, which is something I didn't focus on beforehand. I would usually just make collections and then bring them to in-person events and sell them there. But it's actually been pretty rewarding to focus on my website a little bit. I do miss like the customer interaction. I went to a store in Grand Rapids that carries my work, Gemini Handmade, the other day, and there was a woman who was looking at one of my cowls, and we were both masked, of course, and I got to like help her put one on because they have like snap closures, and it just needs a little bit of instructions like the first time you do them. But I helped her put it on, and it just felt so strange to like help someone somebody do something that I used to help people do all the time. Everybody was in the booth and let's try on 10 cowls until you can find like the one that you like. But we can't do that anymore. So it was a really odd experience to put something on somebody for the first time all year. So it's been strange to focus more on my website, but also rewarding to like also feel safe at home and not necessarily be doing as many in-person events.
How has this changed the way you do business? What do you think will change in the future for you? Are there any changes that you think will be long-lasting after we're able to do sales again in person?
Yeah, so I do think that I'll be focusing on my website more in the future, especially that I can reach a larger audience, and it's not just people in Grand Rapids or Chicago or Detroit where I usually vend. So it's been nice to be like sending things to other states or other countries too, and like focusing on that more, and being able to stay home a little bit more too. Like I've kind of enjoyed the staying home process to a point. Like I do miss social events, but it's also been nice to be home. So I don't know if I miss like the anxiety that I used to feel like before a big show in like a different city. So we'll see if I continue doing those after this is all over. But for now, it's just, all online. I guess another aspect to that too is like I've been wanting to write one of these ebooks for a long time so that I could be promoting the practice of what I like to do on my website. So it's kind of nice to be able to share that. And I have like a couple more of those projects like in the works that will be available hopefully in the springtime as well. So if you're interested in either cyanotype or I'm also releasing a forage and dyeing workshop or ebook in 2021.
I think it's wonderful to have some handmade instructions like the ones you put out to kind of empower people to try some things on their own and and just kind of feel a little better about some of the uncertainty going on in the world right now. Because I really do think, craft sanity is not just like a phrase I picked to name my business. It's really a way of life. And so I think if there's so many things out of our control, and you've contributed one more thing that people can control, like go in your kitchen and have some fun. Dye that old dress that you love, but looks a little like it needs some new color. So
it's very therapeutic to like boil up some dyes and like change something that's white into like a different color. There's something really nice about that, and just like discovering. I think one of the magics of natural dye too is like there's definitely like a direction of what color that can go, but there's always that surprise that like, oh wow, this turned out darker than I thought or lighter than I thought. And like maybe I need to dye it again, or I don't like this color, or I love this color. There's just like always that surprise that like you kind of never know what you're going to be getting when you're putting something inside that dye pot.
Yeah, it's a fun kind of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now that's not fun.
Yeah.
And I think natural dyeing is very fun uncertainty because you don't know what you're going to get, and you can't really get exactly the same result every time. Mm-hmm. And there's something kind of cool about that because it's kind of like a come what may situation. And it's fun. And if you don't like it, you throw it back in the dye pot again. No big deal. Easy. So, okay. Well, Megan, it was so great to get a chance to catch up with you. And and congrats again on your book. This is really fun. And thanks for your contributions to the handmade world here in West Michigan and beyond. And I look forward to seeing you in person as soon as it's safe to do that.
Yes.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.